Continuing fallout from the situation in Parkland, Florida. Obviously, that was a horrific, awful, evil event that occurred last week in Parkland, and that's what dominated the news. Over the weekend, President Trump is apparently now considering whether he is going to push some gun control measures. One of the reasons he's doing that is because the media have launched an all-out emotional assault on gun control. Here is what CNN, Fox News, MSNBC have been doing. They've been covering all of the students from Parkland. They're high school students, and they're speaking out about gun control. So here are some of the students announcing national demonstrations on gun control.
Today, I'd like to announce that we have an event coming up to have everybody in the nation talking about what we're talking about. And one of the things we've been hearing is that it's not the time yet to talk about gun control. And we respect that. We've lost 17 lives, and our community took 17 bullets to the heart. And it's difficult to come back from that. So here's the time that we're going to talk about gun control. March 24th, we have the March for Our Lives, which you can find at marchforourlives.com, and expect to see us a lot. The March for Our Lives is going to be in every major city, and we are organizing it so students everywhere can beg for our lives. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about the red and blue, the GOP and the Democrats. This is about adults and kids.
Now, whom are you going to beg for your life? You're going to beg Trump for your life as though Trump could just flip a switch and suddenly these shootings would not happen anymore? There's significant disagreement about the method that should be used in order to militate against these shootings. There's significant and real disagreements on this. Right? I've suggested there ought to be wildly upped security standards at all of these schools, that there ought to be armed guards at virtually every door, that you might consider at some of these schools actually putting into place some doors that can actually close across the campus and lock like they have at hospitals. At many hospitals, they have lockdown procedures where an active shooter's in the hospital, and so you actually lock off certain parts of the hospital from other parts of the hospital so that the shooter can't just walk through the halls with impunity. And there's a lot of disagreement about this. Democrats want, of course, bans on all sorts of weapons, including the AR-15, which is the most popular rifle in the United States. But this idea that it's all about begging, that it's all about if we just cared enough, that all of this would be fine, we just agree on everything. That, of course, is not true in the slightest. This, of course, however, is what the left is suggesting. So the same student, Cameron Kasky, he says you're either with us or against us, which is pretty wild language considering we are all with you. No one wants to see kids get shot.
You're either with us or against us. We are losing our lives while the adults are playing around. And we have received endless support from your generation, and we thank everybody for that immensely because we really appreciate it. We don't need you. On March 24th, you are going to be seeing students in every single major city marching, and we have our lives on the line here. And at the end of the day, that is going to be what's bringing us to victory and to making some sort of right out of this tragedy.
What does victory look like? What does victory look like? That's the real big question. Okay, if victory is no more shootings, then we all agree on the definition of victory. If victory is a piece of gun control legislation that may or may not actually help, then we don't agree on what victory for the country looks like. And you can see that some of these students, obviously, they're very politically motivated. That's okay. I mean, they're allowed to have their political motivations. My problem here is the same problem that I have with the country as a whole. The country as a whole takes being on camera as some sort of imprimatur of knowledge, some sort of imprimatur of expertise, and that's really silly. So LeBron James speaks about politics. That's his right. He's allowed to do it. Some of the stuff he says, I think, is not completely wrong. But why would we treat, as a country, his version of politics with more credibility than people who have studied the issues and studied the personalities for a long time? I don't, and I don't think other people should. Why would we take a bunch of high school juniors and say that these are experts on gun policy now? They're not experts on gun policy simply because their school was targeted. These are people who have experienced significant pain, and obviously we all stand with them and mourn with them in that pain. They have it to a far greater degree, I'm sure, than anybody who's far away. But that does not mean that what they are saying on politics has any more legitimacy or that it has any more expertise to back it. And yet there's a reason the media does this, right? After the Boston Marathon attacks, did you see victims of the Boston Marathon attacks on TV every day stumping for a travel ban on Muslims? Of course you didn't. After the Orlando shootings, did you see victims of the Orlando shootings who were not left-wing going around and saying, what we need here is a restriction on the number of Muslim immigrants from countries we can't vet? Of course you didn't. Right? The media go out of their way to put people on camera who are sympathetic. This goes all the way back to the Sandy Hook shooting when Piers Morgan was attempting to do this routine, and I called him on it on air. It's highly irritating to me, and it's intellectually dishonest. But there's a reason that all these kids are being put on TV and to put pressure to... The idea, by the way, that a child shall lead them when it comes to politics is silly. The idea that children are experts on policy because they have greater innocence, no, that means that they don't know enough. There's a reason that you don't let 17-year-olds define tax policy, and you shouldn't let 17-year-olds define gun policy either, depending on whether they've actually studied the issue in any significant way. But again, the media have a real interest in trotting out these kids